tonight we're super delighted to have Alex Baker from Kerrang Radio. So hello, Alex.
Hello there. How's it going?
Yeah, we were just discussing off air. The last time we probably met, and I was trying to, sell you 100 roles, and but basically, myself and Alex have been involved with Live and Unsigned and Open Mic UK, and so yeah, it's good to see you, Alex, and congratulations on your newborn. And you say it's obviously putting you to the test at the moment. So
it's so exhausting. Like honestly, I just forgot how hard it was. I've got 4-year-olds, and the new one's 9 weeks. And I just forgot. Like last night, it just didn't want to sleep. So, all right, fine. We just won't sleep then. Cool. I think I had an hour and a half.
Okay.
But it's just the way it goes. It's mad as well because we're at home. Do you know what I mean? Like everything I'm doing is at home. So it's not like I'm going off to the office and like, I've been a radio presenter for almost 15 years, and it's like I'm so used to being in like a lovely soundproof studio somewhere in like the West End or in Birmingham when I was there, or wherever it may be, and it's suddenly just I'm stuck in my dining room.
Yeah.
It's mad.
So it's the challenges of the new world. Do you know what I mean? So please let us explain what your job title is and what that entails on a day-to-day basis, Alex. What is it you exactly do?
Yes, I mean I do a whole bunch of stuff, and I have done for quite some time. So I've covered loads of different things over the years. Primarily, I'm a radio presenter, so I present the new music show on Kerrang. And although it's on Kerrang, like it's actually pretty genreless, my show. I've kind of really made the effort over the past almost 14 years of doing that show to try and make it the case that it's like a place for people who just love new music and want to discover new music. So despite it being on Kerrang, it's not all just rock and metal. There's loads of stuff from singer-songwriters, drum bass producers, hip-hop artists, anything that's like my mantra has always been, if it's good, it gets on. That's always been kind of the way I kind of roll with that particular show. So I do that. Then I also do a whole bunch of other stuff. Like I grew up obsessed with musical theatre, and I played in orchestras from the age of sort of 10. I think I first joined an orchestra through to about 20, and did like European tours and all stuff, playing the flute. Would you believe it? So I sort of did my grade 8 flute when I was I think I was 12 when I did my grade 8 flute. So that was a big part of my life, and musical theatre as well. Although I never performed on stage, I always loved it. So I'm actually now doing a show on Magic at the Musicals as well, which is all about wall-to-wall musical theatre classics, which is amazing. And then also I do a show on Mellow Magic, which is all part of the Magic Radio family, which is that's the music policy for that is timeless, relaxing classics. And I always say, I joke about it on air, but it's actually a music policy that I think is a bit unfair on other radio stations, because the songs have to be timeless. So, defying genre, defying decade. They have to be classics, so they have to be absolute all killer, no filler. And then the relaxing part is just because we try to create like a little relaxing atmosphere with that radio station. So it's kind of unfair because every single song we play is like truly iconic. You go like from Nina Simone to John Lennon to you name it. Like it's quite amazing. So it's a 3 totally different musical spectrums, brand new, exciting new music that basically no one's heard of, and trying to help develop artists and become the next big thing, to like musical theatre. And then like Nina Simone, it's just like, it's mind blowing, but I love it all. So I'm very, very, very lucky. But also over the years, I've done loads of other stuff. When Monster Energy Drink first launched, Monster Energy Drink with the M on the can,
Yeah.
when that first launched in the UK, must have been 10 years ago. And I the only reason I knew about it was because I was at Download Festival DJing. And they had like an activation there with like skaters and stuff going on. And I went up to the guys and I was like, man, this is sick. This is such a great activation. What's going on? Got talking to them. And I said, look, what's going on with your music program? And they're like, we don't really have one. And I was like, well, let's have a meeting. So I went and met them in an office in Hertfordshire. And there was like 3 dudes in this like rented office. And they'd literally just launching this brand in the UK. And I was like, well, I'll do your music program for you. And we sort of built it from nothing. So we had, I think at one point we'd signed like 35 to 40 artists across the whole of Benelux and EMEA. And it was absolutely like monstrous, to use a pun. And so I did that for years as a kind of music consultant and getting, doing endorsement deals and all that sort of stuff as well. So I saw it from that side. So, and also being in bands over the years and everything. So all different angles, from performance to playing radio, to curating playlists, to hosting festival stages, to helping brand endorsements and all that sort of stuff as well. And I've also got an advertising role as well. I head up an advertising section of the advertising team within the company that owns Kerrang and Planet Rock and Mellow Magic and Absolute Radio and all the rest of it. So I keep busy. And I've got a kid, have I mentioned that? A baby.
Well, I think the thing for me that always came across and was always immediately when I spoke to you is your passion for music. And I think that always came forefront. And it just seemed a really good fit for especially for the competitions. And I know you came in when we did the O2 and stuff, that you actually then supported the ones you liked. Do you know what I mean? And I felt that was a really good sort of opportunity for them to just go all the way through and actually have an outlet for their music. And I'm pretty sure one of the bands you picked up on from the competition was Lottery Winners. Can you remember that?
Yeah, man, what a great band. Yeah, totally. It was you that introduced me to those guys. And man, they're doing amazing things now. They just didn't they just do a tune with Nickelback, and like they're absolutely smashing it and doing loads of great stuff. And also there's someone else as well, Chris, that I don't know if we've spoken about this yet, but I'll never forget it. It was Hayes, I think it was, Live and Unsigned at Hayes. Was it? Or was it? No, not. Was it open mic? I can't remember. It was one of them with you. And we were in Hayes, and there was this artist, this girl who came out and started singing this song. I'll never forget it. She came out, she had an acoustic guitar, and she just came out and she was like, I'm going to sing an original song. And she just started launched into this tune. And oh man, Chris, I was absolutely mesmerized. And she can't have been she must have been 15, 16 years old. And she just blew my mind. She was so talented. I was like, who is this person? Like, this is a superstar. Like, she's incredible. I remember giving her full marks and just being so stoked. Anyway, for whatever reason, she didn't get through. And I remember being livid. I was like, you judges don't know what you're talking about. I'm really not angry about it. It's just the way it goes though sometimes, isn't it? That's a beautiful thing about music. I remember going and chatting to her because I saw her with her family afterwards, and I was like, oh, you were so great. Let's keep in touch. Send me your music. I'll play you. You're just so great. And then, it's mad. She ended up going to Brit school, and she's become a songwriter, and she's had top 10 singles now. She's called Gracie.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you know what I thought you were going to say, Lola Young?
No, it wasn't Lola Young. No, it's Gracie. She's called, and she's, oh my god, she's amazing. And sometimes I chat to her and I just say, do you remember when I saw you in Hayes? And she was like, yeah, and you came up afterwards and you said all those words of encouragement. And I was like, this is why I do it. Honestly, this is why I do it, because when you see someone like that who is just so full of talent, it just pours off them. It's like they glisten. Do you know what I mean? You just think, I need to just tell this person how great they are.
I suppose we digress, but you can see the passion coming out, and I expect everyone else can do that. And that's sometimes when you've had they're long, hard days sometimes, and sometimes you're sitting there, and maybe it's just good standard, but nothing standing out, and you think, oh God, what time am I going home? And then just that little spark, you think, that's what I'm here for. And I guess that would be the same for you when you get, I guess, people sending you stuff through for the radio. You're kind of speeding through it, and then suddenly you go, wow.
Yeah.
So I suppose that could lead on quite nicely to how would be the best way for people to get music to you, and what would you advise the best method?
So it's changed obviously so much over the years. It used to be all about physical stuff, send physical CDs, stuff, sacks and sacks and sacks to post. But I basically scrapped all that. In fact, I was scrapping it anyway, and then COVID happened, and I wasn't in the office. There's literally no point sending anything to the office because I'm not going to get it, So I put a thing out and put something on the website just saying from now on, just submit stuff digitally, which you can. Just get to kerrangradio.co.uk/Alex, and you'll find stuff on there. But yeah, when it comes to submissions, I'm always overwhelmed actually by the people the disparity between those that do it right and those that do it really badly. And it's slightly different now because of the sort of single culture and because physical's sort of on the demise a bit or a lot. But it used to be the case that when you'd get a demo CD, and you'd have it'll be the whole album with no guidance at all as to what the focus track is, which song you're really proud of, all the rest of it. So one of my first pieces of advice is always lead with your strongest track. Don't ever assume that someone's going to receive it and go, right, I'm going to take 25 minutes out of my day to really listen to this whole record cover to cover. Like, just that's not how it works. You know, people are listening to 500 things in a week or 1,000 things in a week or whatever it might be. And you've just got to lead with your best stuff. So I always say, so back in the day, just say first track on that CD, just make sure it's the killer song, or don't even bother with anything else. Just put that one tune on. And similarly now, don't bother sending a whole email, like a whole stream to like, you know, every single track. Just send the one that you're absolutely pushing and the one you think that best describes, you know, sonically what you're all about. I think that's just an important thing to sort of bear in mind. And also covering materials, you know, just a little bit of personality in a covering email saying, oh, you know, I've listened to the show, or this is what we're all about, check this out. Like, if you're a fan of this band, you might like ours, and blah, blah, blah. All that sort of stuff just helps people on the receiving end just kind of contextualize what your music's all about. But it does depend on the recipient. Like, I'm quite, because of my music policy, because I'm sort of like, if it's good, it gets on, and it's genreless, I'm sort of not really listening for anything in particular. So, you know, sometimes people say, if the production's really bad, will you just throw it in the bin? And I'm like, well, no, because if the production's not great, but it matches up with what they're trying to create, like if it's a punk band, if it's really super polished, great. But if it's not, if it sounds like it's been recorded in the toilet, then that actually might add to the sort of to what they're trying to create. So it just all depends on what it's all about. So I think it's just important for people to have a really solid steer on what it is they're trying to put out into the world, and leading with their best foot, like putting their best foot forward, basically, if that makes sense. But what I can tell you a quick story as well, if you want, and just tell me to shut up if I could just talk all day long. But one such person that submitted their music in that way was Bastille. So Dan from Bastille, before Bastille was even really Bastille, it was just Dan making music in his bedroom on his laptop. He sent through a CD, and it was one of the, exactly like you say, that kind of moment of like, whoa. I remember I was in the car listening to loads of physical stuff, and I used to just drive up and down the M40 listening to tune after tune after tune. I got really good at being able to take a CD out of its case and put it in the CD thing without taking my eyes off the road. You know? And then if it was good, I'd throw it in the back. If it was bad, I'd throw it in the footwell. And at the end of the journey, I'd collect all the stuff out from the footwell and go take it to the recycling centre. But yeah, it was like one of those. I was probably about 30 or 40 CDs in, and I just heard the first couple of bars of Floors. And for the next like 3.5, 4 minutes, I was just like, this song is amazing. And immediately rewind it and like, well, you know, hit back and then listen to it again. And again and again and again. And when I got to my destination, when my wife and I used to live long distance, when I got to her house, I was like, you need to listen to this guy. He's so sick. Listen to this. And it stuck it on. And she was like, actually, yeah. And she's just so sick to death of me talking about new music. So she's always like slightly jaded, but she was like, yeah, that is actually sick, isn't it? And I was like, you're so sick. So I started playing it and hyping it up so much on air. And then, yeah, he got signed to Virgin. And it was a really nice moment, actually, where Kerrang Radio and Q Radio, like Q Radio is part of Q Magazine when Q Magazine was a thing. Q Radio was in the same building as Kerrang, and Dan came in for an interview with Q Radio Breakfast, not knowing that Kerrang was in the same building. And I was just sat at my desk doing some work, and I saw him walk and go into a studio, and I was like, oh man, Dan's here, mad, because I'd never met him. Spoke to him a bit online, but never actually met him. And he went into the studio, did his thing. Half an hour later, he was out and went. And I was like, I should have gone and said hello, but whatever. I'm sure he's busy. I'm busy too, kind of thing. And then one of the dudes from Virgin came back and was like, oh, on the way out, Dan just realised this is where Kerrang is as well, and just wanted to know if he could say hello. I was like, of course he can. So he came in and he just came over and was like, oh, I just want to say thanks for playing me on the radio. I really appreciate it. I was like, Matthew, what a lovely dude. And then he's a superstar now. I mean, that band are just astronomical, and it's nice. That's what I love about it. I love just being part of that journey. Do you know what I mean?
But you've almost told that story in part because that guy had good manners, and there's something.
Yeah, it makes, honestly, Chris, it makes a massive difference. Massive. Like, people want to work. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's the music business or what. It doesn't matter. People want to work with people they like. I know it sounds so basic and kind of obvious, but you'd be amazed how few people get that. Like there's some people that send emails that are so rude, like listen to my band. You're like, all right, mate, chill out. I've got 1,000 other things I could listen to here. Is you going to give me any other reason maybe I should listen to you first, or are you just going to be an arsehole about it? Excuse my French.
just kind of doing some quick fast stuff, and then obviously we can expand from it. So where does Kerrang fit in the radio world, and also as a part of that, it's really cool that Kerrang is, you know, most people would think, wow, this is a band type thing. So it's really cool that you're opening up. So where does it fit for most artists in the world? Because there's obviously some places it's just not worth submitting your material.
Right.
So where does it fit in the kind of world of submitting material to radio stations?
Yeah, so Kerrang, so really my show on Kerrang, which is Fresh Blood, is like the new music show. So that is like the gateway into the world of Kerrang. You know, and I also write for Kerrang magazine and other publications as well. So it's kind of a gateway kind of world of new music. That's the first in mind. The second is the side of that show. Yes, Kerrang is a brilliant supporter of new music, but outside of that show, it is primarily what you'd expect from a brand like Kerrang. It's emo, it's punk, all that sort of stuff. An upcoming pop, there's no point sending material to the general station. Send it to me, but sending it to the general station is probably not going to get you anywhere. Having said that, you know, there are loads of radio stations around the country who support new music. You know, some of them are a lot smaller than Kerrang, some of the sort of smaller kind of community stations, but they still got an audience. You know what I mean? They still add up. But then outside of that, of course, you've got the ultimate might of BBC Introducing, you know, and like, you know, you could argue that they're a competitor of mine, but they're not. We're all part of the same family. You know, we're all people that really care about supporting new music. And BBC Introducing make it really simple for people. You know, you can get on their website. They've got a whole portal where you can upload your music, and it goes through this whole process. And there's all these producers, this whole massive team of people that listen to stuff. It's regionalized. So there's usually an introducing show that's relevant to your region. So it cuts down. So it's not like just everyone in that nation is trying to filter it into one place, like Radio 1. It like filters through to all these different, like Radio Stoke or Radio Essex. You know, Ollie on Radio Essex does amazing work, and all these other guys around the country. And then that all feeds, all those playlists then feed into that master brand at Radio 1, get that national play, that national exposure. So that's kind of how the radio landscape works. And radio is a big part, you know, of helping with the kind of, I always think of it as like a stamp of approval, you know, in this massively fractured kind of world where anyone can upload anything to Spotify and anyone can have stuff on YouTube. People need now more than ever, like a seal of approval. They need that stamp of approval, and it helps massively. And one of the things I often say to artists that I've done the show is like, use it. You know, don't just go like, oh, I've been played on radio, brilliant, I'm going to make £1 million now. That, like, you've been gone and says, right, we've got support from Kerrang, get me on this tour, can you book me for this show? Like, use that backing to like do other things. BBC Introducing, oh, I've been playlisted on 6 of the BBC Introducing stations, can you book me for this festival? Can you on tour with this? I do a demo for you, whatever it might be. Just it's just about, it's part of your arsenal as an artist, you know, to utilize those champions that you've got at your fingertips.
Is there any other independent radio stations that come to mind as well as that? You've got the BBC Introducing, you've got your show. Is there any other standout radio stations that you think cut across the national sort of landscape?
It depends in terms of genres what you're after. I mean, there's a lot. It's strange actually how there tends to be a lot more support for alternative and rock music. You know, I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's just because of the history of it and the way bands work, and it's slightly different beast compared to major label pop artists and stuff like that. But you know, Planet Rock, they have a new rock show which is absolutely amazing, which Wyatt hosts over on Radio X, which is part of Global. John Kennedy, he does amazing work. You know, he's an absolute superstar in terms of supporting new music. The guys over on you know, Tom Robinson and like on BBC Six Music, again part of the BBC. But there is these pockets of people who really support and care about new music. Outside of that, in terms of smaller stations, I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but those are the big ones. Like Radio X, they do amazing work. John Kennedy is a superstar. The whole of BBC Introducing, and bear in mind, there's loads of BBC Introducing shows. They're all over the country. And then myself on Kerrang, Wyatt on Planet Rock. But yeah, outside of that, outside of that, there's not loads of routes. You know, there's all the community stations, and you can go down as small as like hospital radio stations, but they've got audiences. People listen to them, and you'd be foolish to overlook that. Do you know, there's a person I know who works in PR, and I was talking to her about a couple of years ago about the sort of community stations, and she's primarily a rock music plugger, so she plugs artists to radio stations. And I said, outside of Kerrang, and like, who do you plug to? And she was like, oh, all the locals. Like, there's loads of them. And I was like, yeah, well, what's the kind of reach? Like, how big is the reach? It's like, when you add them all up, you're into the millions. You know, when you get 500 different radio stations and you're getting that exposure, it adds up. You know, it'd be foolish to just go after the big boys all the time.
Brilliant. Some real nuggets there. Thank you. And so what point do you think in an artist's career should they consider, you know, radio? You know, I mean, we all see, you know, an act probably coming out the studio first time with that enthusiasm of the first song they've done. And that's great, because we don't want to diminish that. But actually, that doesn't always mean to say that's radio ready, does it? So when would you think was a good time for an artist to approach a radio station?
I think the best way to answer that is to think about what I said earlier with regard to, you know, what you're doing, what you're anticipating to do with that exposure. Because there are artists, and I've had this before in the past, where I've played artists too early. Like, they're not really ready. They haven't got all the other stuff going for them at the time. They've got a couple of great songs. I just think, right, brilliant, that goes straight on the air, amazing. But there's nothing that they have to do with that. They can't. They're not ready to tour. They're not ready to write an album. They're not ready to approach record labels because they haven't got the material yet, or whatever it is. So I think radio is part of the tapestry of your kind of like, of everything that's going on in your career at the time. I think you can run into the risk of thinking, as soon as the media starts taking an interest, that's it, you're on this golden ticket, like nothing's going to stop you. But it's all part of the tapestry of everything that's going on, you know. And you know, the other thing to say about the music world is that it really is an industry, in the sense that there are loads of different people that all have different specialisms. So you've got people who are tastemakers, who care about shaping people's music tastes at radio stations and the likes of Spotify, Amazon Music, etc., Apple. You know, you've also got people who specialize in PR and making and helping artists reach those people. You've got people who manage bands and know all the ins and outs about how to connect the dots and how to put together tour plans and all the rest of it. So there's all these different all these different people. But the thing is, they all know each other. You know, it's like, even though it seems like quite an overwhelming industry, it's actually not. Like, yes, there's a lot of people, but once you know one, you get to know another, and then, do you know what I mean? And it all kind of cross-pollinates. And I think that's quite an amazing thing. And I think this is why there's sometimes this perception about the music industry that, you know, you just need to know the right people. It's all about, you know, it's all nepotism, and everyone know, you know, you either know the right people or you don't. And there is truth in that, but it's not like as negative as people say it is. You know what I mean? It's not like only people who know the right people are getting signed and that's a bad thing. It's like, if they've taken the effort to make the contact with those people and created those industry champions, then those industry champions will champion that artist. You know, it's like with Gracie, who we talked about earlier. I can't tell you how many emails I've sent to people around the industry about Gracie, just because I think she's amazing, you know, and I want her to succeed. So whether I'm emailing Kiss, you know, the radio station, or emailing people at Spotify, emailing people at Amazon Music, whoever it is, I'm just like, I need people to know about this artist. She's so sick. And that's just because I'm a champion and I'm not unique. You know, there's a whole bunch of people like me who are in that sort of similar mindset. So it's just about getting your foot in the door, finding those people who will care about you and want to push you, and like not leveraging the relationship, but like, you know, saying, oh, would you put in a good word or whatever, and people will. You know, people are busy, but people will always try and find the time for those artists that really deserve it, you know.
I really like what you said there in terms of it's almost like building a structure. You know, it's not coming out the traps too early. And I've seen this so often. It's like, when's the right time? It's like, when's the right time to put the roof on the house? Well, build the foundations first. You know, build the walls, and the roof will stand solid for a long while. And I think that's the big thing that seems to be missing from a lot of artist development. It's like, you know, build everything up so that you're not sort of almost like zigzagging your way, zigzagging your way to creating a buzz, because it's all about creating a buzz, a noise, so that you're going like, oh God, yeah, there's this and there's this, and you know, next thing, yeah, I heard Gracie's song, and it's suddenly like reinforcing and it gets momentum. And so I thought that was a really great answer. So
do you know, Chris, just on that as well, there's another sort of phenomenon that you'll have seen so many times over the years, and I think a load of people listening to this will have seen it as well, where it seems like an artist comes out of nowhere. You know, it's like they come in at that level, just boom, here they are, Dua Lipa in the house, or whoever it might be. You know, and they don't realise that there's been so much graft behind the scene to get to that point. You know what I mean? There's been so much demoing, there's been so many like the networking opportunities and building that structure, building those foundations, so that when you're announced to the world, there you are. You know, and similar things happening with Gracie now. Like Gracie spent, I'm not going to spend this whole time talking about Gracie, but she's a good working example of this. I think that she spent such a lot of time writing songs for other people. You know, some of her big successes so far haven't been as Gracie. It's been as, you know, here's insert top 10 single here, and she's one of the people that's written it. You know, so she's not always been in the limelight herself. She's been part of that factory, part of that industry, part of that foundation, until the time comes where it's time for her to step in front of the spotlight. There's a guy called Dan Lancaster as well, who I fell in love with basically about 12 years ago. He used to be in a band called Proceed, who were like really technical, brilliant kind of musicians band, you know, like really great. And his voice is just ridiculous. And I was always like overwhelmed by how good his voice is. But he was also a great producer. Like he'd produce all his own records. And when I was doing my old band's EP, I was like, oh, let's get Dan to produce it. And we did, and it was sick. And he was just brilliant to work with. And like, he's got a real methodical way about him, Dan. And this is what I'm talking about. This is how these things happen. So fast forward a few years down the line, me and Dan still in touch. Proceed's broken up, but one of his band members is now in Don Broco, and he's working with Don Broco a bit, helping write songs. They get him in to produce a record. He produces a record. It sounds amazing. It gets really successful. It notches him up a step. And then we're at a party one night, and I see Jordan from Bring Me the Horizon. Get talking to Jordan. Like, I know that he's really into production and into like technicality, and I start talking to him about Dan Lancaster. Dan Lancaster's the biz, it's amazing. Dan Lancaster this, Dan Lancaster that. They have a chat, you know, work some stuff out, and then he's producing their next record, and Dan Lancaster's got platinum discs on his walls. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just about that, finding people you believe in and just helping them navigate that world. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take the credit for Dan Lancaster's successes. Like, he is a savant, like he's a genius, and he, you know, he wouldn't have any of the success without the talent. But I'm just saying it just having that structure there and having that those people that believe in you just makes such a massive difference, and just not expecting too much too quickly. I think you have to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, and you've picked up there just these little helps that, you know, that you play your part in, and little sort of little platforms here and there. And it's interesting that you said that the songwriting route's coming for both of those, and the production. So it's almost like them coming to the forefront of being an artist. And we see that countless times. Ed Sheeran and Lady Gaga, things like that, have come through as writers, and then someone who's writing all these banging tunes. and at least we forget that's fundamentally where the vast majority of the money is, especially with live events.
Oh my gosh,
not really happening right at the moment. So anyway, so what would you think would be, you know, and maybe it's a little bit taking you out of your role, where would you think would be the main thing for artists to focus on to start with? What would be your advice looking back in your musical journey as well? Where would they be best placed to focus with their music career to start with?
I heard a quote recently by this life coach guy who I love called Tony Robbins, you may have heard of. And he said, I can't remember the exact quote, people are rewarded in public for that which they practice in private. And I think like that is so fundamentally, I guess what the point I'm making here straight out the gate is hone your craft, you know, like work hard. Whilst other people are going partying and having a laugh, you're training, you're having extra vocal lessons, you're playing the piano till your fingers bleed. Like, you know, you have to just really work at it, because, you know, the reality is when it comes to things like music, the music business, the people that you see, those people are the top of the pile. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of people that want to make music, and the people that make it are the people that try the hardest. You know, it's not an accident. You have to put the effort in, you have to put the graft in. So honing your craft is absolutely the fundamental. And I know it seems obvious, but again, you'd be amazed how people skip that part, or they think they've got a bit of talent, and that's fine. So I'll just write some songs and see what happens. You've got to be one of the best vocalists, one of the best piano players, one of the whatever you're doing, you need to actually really excel at it and blow people away, because that's when your talent takes on that next level. You know, when what you're doing is so effortless, physically, that's when you then it seems like magic. Do you know what I mean? So when you see someone like, I'll never forget when James Arthur performed on X Factor all those years ago, and his voice is just so good that he opens his mouth and this voice just comes out, and you're just like, oh my God, I don't even know where to look. His voice is so amazing. And that guy has sung every day of his life, 6-7 hours a day to develop and train that, you know, that ability. So it seems like he doesn't care. He's just like, just sing this song, whatever. But the actual talent that shines through is really strong. So yeah, for me, I think that would be a massive starting point.
I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind is that, you know, one, hats off to the people that have come tonight, because actually this is part of the process, is actually gleaning the knowledge that you've got. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got a superior knowledge in your field, because that's your profession. So hats off to the guys that come tonight. And the other thing that comes to mind is it must be so difficult for, you know, for want of your best, you know, your development years probably being your teenage to, you know, to young adult route, is that, you know, where you sit, you've got so much hot air being put at you from family and friends that you're good and you're sick, that we see. I've seen the most insanely talented musicians, but they just lack so many different qualities in other areas, because they think it's just all going to fall in front of them. And it's like, it's like, hang on a minute, there's the professionalism, there's the getting on time, there's being nice to people. You know, you could be the most talented, I always think this, you'd be the most talented person in the world, but if you can't get the right place at the right time, well, no one's going to give you that gig again, and no one's going to hear you. You know, so it doesn't matter how good you are. Anyway, I shouldn't. This is you, not me.
No, but Chris, you're absolutely right though, and it's an important point to land. You know, and like nobody, like I say, nobody wants to work. I don't want to name names, but there's people I've interviewed over the years who you just think, oh my gosh, you're just the worst. Like, just there's one particular person who I won't name her name, but she was a big singer, big. And I remember I interviewed her once for a breakfast show I was doing years and years and years ago. And I've never met someone more conceited in my life. She was so arrogant. I actually couldn't believe it. It was staggering. And because I'm quite like a emotive guy, I sort of wear my heart on my sleeve, I almost couldn't look at her. It's like, I just almost can't talk to you. You're just too arrogant.
It sounds like a little bit of a similar experience I had at the Isle of Wight Festival. And that particular artist, which it's not fair to name now, I just felt to myself, you've reinforced, rather than go the other way. And what this particular artist did, I'll tell you what they did, is like, we were fortunate enough to be on stage and behind the scenes. And it was like, the person with me said, oh, can I have my photo with you? And her first reaction was like, oh yeah, come on then. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was almost like, can I get away with this? Do you know what I mean?
Really?
And it was such a timing issue. In the end, both the girls went, it just kicked it. It just almost like kicked the fun out of it. This moment of meeting like this megastar, suddenly like, actually don't bother
actually
now.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
And it was such a shame. Yet you on the other side of it, you can't sing any more praises about Gracie and Bastille, who's been so gracious and humble, and what you've kind of the bit you've played in that. So
and the thing is that it matters because people make more effort for those people. Do you know what I mean? Like if Dan or Gracie or anyone came in to any of the radio stations that I work for, I would tell people, like, extra effort with them. Let's do something a bit more interesting. Let's raise the bar. Let's make some extra content and put some other stuff out. Like, let's just do something that's a bit more than just like, oh, so tell us about your new record, because they're worth the effort. Like, you're invested in them. You want them to succeed. And when you get the opposite of that, someone who's just so arrogant, you can't even look them in the eye, you just think, oh, well, whatever. I don't really care whether you succeed or not. And actually, lo and behold, that person doesn't really do much anymore. So I think it's just people around that person were probably just got sick of her and just thought it's not worth the effort. There's plenty of other people we could work with.
Exactly. So what would be your advice to, in terms of, there's radio play, but maybe a radio interview? What's your best advice for acts to prepare ahead of a radio interview and to take with them to a radio interview?
I think it's really important for people to have, and this plays into what we were saying before about prep, about honing your craft. I think the next step of that is like knowing who you are. I think, I remember when I first started writing for magazines are a very different beast for radio, right? Because radio, you play the tune and people can hear it. When you're writing for a magazine, you have to think beyond the audio, right? You have to sort of, what are you trying to say about this artist that's interesting, that's going to hook someone in? Because you can't just play the song and that's it. You have to find another angle. So, I struggle with that a bit because I came from an audio background of just like, I just want to big up an artist and let the music do the talking. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly I had to kind of go, all right, no, what actually is it about this artist that is really worth these column inches sort of thing? And I think that's all part of it. You need, and I don't mean like a story. I don't mean like you have to have some sort of tragic thing that's happened to you or whatever, but you need something that's going to connect with people, And I think if you've got that as part of your personality and part of your act to an extent, then you'll just naturally have more interesting things to talk about. And some artists, are just inherently very interesting people. They might have an interesting worldview, or their music might be so strange and surreal that people want to kind of ask them about that. Some people might just find that they want to be interested in politics or have an angle on veganism or whatever it is. They just got something that connects them to the audience in a way that's more than just, oh yeah, I like writing music, I hope you like them. Because that's not a story, that's not a hook. And I feel always weird talking about this sort of stuff because my background is finding great artists and playing them on the radio. I don't care whether they've got a good story or not. If the song is great, they need to play it personally. But I'm also aware of the fact that that's kind of quite an anomaly. In most of the industry, you need people with hooks. Hooks sell, so you have to figure out what your hook is and why anyone should care beyond that you can write a great top line,
And alternatively, I suppose it comes down to a bit of personality in the sense that at any walk, or whatever level you are musically, just to sort of maybe go to an open mic night and just stand there could be so much more gained by actually forcing yourself to be a bit more sociable. It doesn't come naturally to most people, but actually forcing yourself to go like what you did there, that was cool. Do you know what I mean? Or,
yeah.
Are you playing somewhere else, or can I take some pictures, or do you want me to do a video of you? It's kind of learning. We all do it, I think, to a certain extent, although we don't give enough credit. That the person we are, I'm a firm believer we're all introvert and extrovert, the same, whoever we're with. Some people we can think, they flatten you, and other people just like speaking to you just infuses my passion for talking about music. So, and that's good, but not everyone is. And some people you're like, right, I'm struggling to get anything out of them, you know what I mean? So it's a case that everyone probably should just push themselves to try to be that person that's a bit more engaging and a bit more, anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like an effervescence to people, and people sort of talk about the and I sort of mentioned this earlier, but people talk about the X Factor. I don't mean the show, but I mean, and this is an interesting thing in itself. There's probably people that are watching this now that don't necessarily realize that the X Factor is a thing beyond the X Factor. Like the reason the X Factor is called the X Factor is because the X Factor is a thing. Like it's the intangible part of a person's personality that you're drawn to. So you can have two artists that are exactly the same, musically gifted in exactly the same way, playing the same songs, singing the same lyrics. One of them is a star and the other one isn't. And that's because of the X Factor. It's that thing, it's that magic, it's that kind of magic dust that you just can't, and for me, I and this makes me sound like a bit of a weirdo, but I'm like drawn to it. I can like see it. When someone like Gracie, when she got up on stage, this is years ago, when she was just a kid, it just drenched in this talent where you're just drawn to them. You just want to go over to them and say, "You're bloody amazing! Oh, you're so amazing!" It's that, and yeah, you can't fake that, but you can get to that point, and you get to that point by having undeniable talent and then being someone, to exactly to your point, Chris, that people want to spend time with. You know, you think to yourself, well, that's someone I'd love to interview. I'd love to know more about that, or that lyric's so interesting. Where's that come from? Rather than just like, you know, someone who's really flat. And we've all done it. You know, everyone who's worked in radio, we've all interviewed people who've got nothing to say, and it is really hard work. I actually walked away from an interview once backstage at a festival. It's the only time I've ever done it. But I was interviewing this pop artist who was nice, but just had nothing to say. Like they just didn't give anything. It was like literally yes, no answers. And I remember saying, like, should we just stop this? You know, and I never had any problem like connecting with people. I've always be buoyant and like try and bring people out of themselves. But he just did not care. He just had nothing to say. Just a boring dude.
So you've then got the case of like he's lost that opportunity for radio exposure, probably not going to make good TV either. So he's limited, that person's limited themselves. So just kind of rolling on to that same theme then, if someone's had the radio interview, what should be done? It's probably an obvious question, but I'd rather ask it. You know, what should you do afterwards? You've had the radio interview. What would be the post radio interview?
I think, yeah, one of the things you should do is you should maintain that connection. You know, if you've been out to you know, be interviewed at a radio station or whatever, you've taken that time to be personable and forge that relationship with that person. You should try and see that through. You know, you should make sure you stay in touch with them. You should just, and you don't have to be really aggressive about it, but just every couple of months, just drop them a line. Oh, I was driving through the area, heard your show, thinking of you, hope you're well. Just all that sort of stuff, because it just helps that authenticity and helps cement you as someone that people want to champion. But also, I think it's just about utilizing that radio play. And like I said earlier, just making sure you're being mindful of the fact that being played on the radio or getting added to a Spotify playlist or whatever it might be is an important thing. There's a lot of people that aren't getting played on radio. There's a lot of people that haven't been. It's a third party stamp of endorsement. So, and people, the thing is, it's a bit controversial perhaps to say this, but I don't mind saying it amongst friends. People forget that there's a lot of people in the music industry, like there is every industry, who don't really set the trend. You know, they just follow. So if they've heard that someone's good, they'll go, oh yeah, they're really good. And you know, they just sort of follow it. And this is one of the reasons why pluggers and PR people, when they're sending stuff around, the first thing they'll say is 100,000 Spotify streams, or added to Zane Lowe's beach show, or whatever it might be, because they're just trying to land the point that other people care about this. So perhaps you should too. And for me, it always bothers me, because I'm like, I don't care how many plays you've got. I don't care who you know. I'll play you if you're good. But that's, again, I'm an anomaly in that respect. Most people don't act like that. Most people go, oh, right, well, there's a real momentum behind these guys. I should probably jump on board. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing at all wrong with that. But it's just being mindful of that and being purposeful about what you do. So if you've had radio play, you've had a third party stamp of approval, trade off it, do something with it. You know, don't just go, oh, that's nice, isn't it? My mum heard it. You know,
I think it's quite powerful as well, isn't it? And whether it's yourself or another radio station, to sort of pick up on a line you said, like, you know, one of the best, you know what I mean, guitar riffs I've ever heard, you know, picking up on that and put it on an EPK, and then suddenly 100%. You know, you pick up and there's a couple of lines, yeah, I know Alex Baker, or if he thinks they're good, do you know what I mean? It's that power of influence, isn't it? So definitely, I always say an EPK when working with artists is just, you know, just put it down, make it short and punchy. And like you say, pluggers are going to put the figures down, because it's not just like I've set up my Instagram and Spotify last week. It's like people work in it and people like us. Do you know what I mean? So
and you know, just to quote Tony Robbins again, because I just love him. He another one of his things that he always talks about is success leaves clues. So like his whole thing, he's been a life coach for 40 years. He always talks about the fact that success leaves clues. What he does is he researches people who have been immensely successful and finds out what it is about them that's been successful, and then emulates it, or takes that strategy on board and tries to do it himself. And, you know, it's so funny you mentioned about the EPK thing. There are so many bands that I've played over the years, or not just me, other stations as well, where the presenter has talked really highly of them. And then when that EPK comes around next time round, there's no quote. It's not there. And you just think, why have you not used that? you know, and what I'm saying is that success leaves clues. Look at what other people are doing. Look at a movie poster. What's the first thing you see on a movie poster apart from the actors and that? You see quotes, 5 stars, Empire magazine, you know, like best film I've seen all year, or the horror film of the decade, or whatever. Like there's a reason they do that. It's because it's motivating and it gets people to care. Like if the biggest movie houses in the world are doing it, why the hell aren't you? You know what I mean?
It's interesting you should say about Tony Robbins, because he's just, if people really want to get in depth for that, is because he's replicating the NLP model, which is where he comes from, which is kind of is mastering someone else that does it better, and why a marksman, why did they score that? And they work out exactly what they did and then replicate it. And it's exactly the same model, but he's just taken on a different league because he's such a big guy, big character.
Totally.
So I'm conscious that I you know, we want to get some questions in before this evening's out. You know, I suppose just a quick one in terms of maybe one that won't get picked out is, you know, perhaps someone, you know, as an artist, what's the best way for someone to get in maybe a role that you did in presenting and involved in radio stations? What's your advice on a slightly different angle if they just want to get involved in the music industry from a grounds roots level, I suppose?
Well, I'll tell you, first thing to say about that is being a radio presenter is an absolute privilege. Like it is, I can't believe that I get to do it, you know, and it is a tapestry of lots of other things. I think if I just did my radio shows and nothing else, it would be difficult to, like, you know, live where I live and everything else. It's tapestry. I do lots of other stuff, you know, to sort of make money and make a living. But that said, it is a joy and a privilege every day. And do you know what? Especially since COVID, you know, since March 2020, every single one of us presenters for Bauer, we've all presented from home, and we've been doing our radio shows, national radio shows to millions of people from our houses. And having that connection with the audience over this past year has been totally amazing, and absolutely don't take it for granted. So yeah, in short, it's an amazing thing to get into. If you want to get into it, I think there's two sort of major routes into radio. One is student radio, because people in the radio industry really care about SRA. SRA do student radio section, do loads of great work, and they do demo clinics and stuff like that, and big content directors, you know, the likes of Paul Sylvester, who I'm friends with, who works at Absolute Radio, or Tony Morey, who's the boss at Magic, or, you know, whoever it may be from Global, all sorts of different people will be involved in the SRA, scouting for new talent. You know, it's a constant thing. So that's a really good thing to get involved with, for sure. Outside of that, it's just about getting your foot in the door. And there's so many different routes. You know, you can help make the tea and just like try and do some radio shows on the side and show your demos, or it's all that kind of really grassroots stuff that's been in practice for years and years and years. I mean, for me, I started at Kerrang on their street team. So I used to hand out like car stickers and, you know, go outside clubs and give out Kerrang radio flyers to, you know, My Chemical Romance shows or whatever it was at the time, and stuff like that. And you just sort of, you build a rapport, again, down to rapport, really. You build a rapport with the people that work there, show them that you're authentic, show them that you really care, and just make yourself indispensable as you can be in the media. And that's worked for me and worked for so many people that I've tried to mentor and help over the years to have that attitude, you know. And again, the exact opposite of that is someone, you know, I met at a festival years ago who said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to come and work at Kerrang." I was like, "Oh yeah, you know, what are you going to do?" They're like, "I'm going to be a presenter." I was like, "Oh right." So like, what? How? Oh right, I didn't know. Who are you? Like, started chatting to them, and they were just like, just going on about how they were going to be a presenter, and it was all about them. It was me, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I just thought to myself, like, I know what the guys are like at Kerrang, and you're not going to fly even for a day, because people can't stand egos. They want people who are going to come in and really work hard and care about the music, care about the bigger picture. And this person's going to come in and give it the big I am, and they're not going to last a day. And they didn't, you know, they didn't last a day. They even got their foot in the door. So having that approach and that mindset, regardless of what you're doing, whether that's music industry or radio or doing something completely different, mindset is 99.9% of success, I think.
You've articulated that brilliantly, and I think that's echoed from a lot of the speakers we've had over the last few weeks. The same: make yourself useful, make yourself a bit indispensable. And actually, this guy's got skills. oh, can you do this as well? It's exactly how it goes. I mean, it's exactly how, in the studio, competition, artist development, anything we do like that. If someone comes in the door and got skills, you think, oh, what else can they do?
Yeah, anyway, and then you build up a trust, don't you? Like, there's a quote I read the other day that said, the definition of trust is that you've got a positive expectation for the behaviours of other people, from the person you're trusting. And that's to me, it's just like so well articulated. I'm not going to give someone an opportunity if I don't think they deserve it. That it's all part of their identity. They need to have the right mindset. They need to be in it for the right reasons. They're not like an egotistical maniac. They've got something to say. They really care about new music or whatever it might be. Like Laura, who helps me out with my show Fresh Blood, for years and years and years and years and years, anytime anyone asked me if they could help me with Fresh Blood, I said no. She's like, no, it's my baby. Like, no, I'm not having anyone near it. No one tells me what to do. No one gets involved with it at all. It's just, for the past 14 years, I've literally not let anyone anywhere near it. And that's, more for me, because I've had to work so bloody hard on it. But Laura, she came in and did work experience at Kerrang, and she just came in and she just got her head down, and just everything you asked her to do, she'd just nail it. Like, she wouldn't just do it, she'd like nail it, and she'd go above and beyond expectations every time. Even silly things like, oh, do you reckon you could write us a bit of prep about this artist? And she'd do it, and there'd be pictures, and like she'd get their YouTube links and everything. It would be like proper report. She'd always go to town. So then years ago, about a year and a half ago, I was at work, and it wasn't in the radio office, it was in the magazine office at Bauer. And I saw her just sat in the lobby. I was like, Laura, what are you doing here? And she was like, oh, I've applied for a job at this, like doing scheduling, like the rest of it. She got that job, no problem. And then she emailed me about 3 months later saying, oh, I don't suppose you'd ever consider me helping out with Fresh Blood. I listen to it every week, and I love this artist. And I really showed that she cared and had an interest in it. And because of her authenticity, because I knew her and I knew how hard she worked and how much she cared, and she was in it for the right reasons, I was just like, this is an easy yes. Like, she is going to make life better for me. It's going to make the show better. She's going to get something out of it. It's an opportunity for me to like show her the ropes a bit as well. And, and she's been doing that now for 12 months or so, and she's absolutely smashing it. So it's just about that authenticity and having that mindset. People want to work with people who are great. As simple as that.
You smashed that. I smashed that question out of the park. So anyway, I'm gonna hopefully, if we go on a little bit longer, is that okay, Alex? Maybe because we've kind of covered such good things.
Sorry, just you can't shut me up. That's all right.
Not at all. I think it's all been hugely valuable and reinforces, a lot of our beliefs and Mass Records and future. That we can't say it, but to hear it from someone else sometimes is like, yeah, we are saying the right things. Hopefully, most of the time. Lewis, have we got some questions there that we can go through? I mean, I see there's a lot on the chat, but perhaps you can collate them a little bit better.
Yeah, we'll go through as many as we can. So if we start from the top, first question in is just what's your favorite platform to receive music? So I know you mentioned the submission form on the website earlier. Do you get any from Submit Hub or any other companies like that? Is any ones the artist should be looking to use?
Yeah, so there's so many, and some of them you obviously have to pay loads for, and there's so many. So a lot of the major record labels use Horlicks, which is really useful, but again, it doesn't really do anything that SoundCloud doesn't do. And to be honest, I really like SoundCloud. It's one of many. I'm not saying it's the only one that should be used, but what I like is when people think about the consumer journey, right? Think about the experience for me, like receiving it. What I don't want a link to something that takes me over here where I then can't download the music if I want to play it. I want everything in one place. And what I like about SoundCloud is you can go on there, you can see the waveform, you can listen to the tune, you can skip forward easily, check whatever, all that sort of stuff. And then you can just set it to download. So I hit the download and I get the WAV straight away. It just makes it so much easier. So so I really like SoundCloud. I also, people can email the Fresh Blood inbox, which is just fresh.blood@kerrangradio.co.uk. And that's, it's a massive inbox. So you can just submit MP3s, literally just, and again, to my point earlier, don't send like 10, send one. I'm not going to listen to 10, but I will listen to one, and actually just that point alone, if I see an email in the inbox and there's 10 attachments, you've got to think about the psychology of human beings. Like, people get overwhelmed. They go, oh, what? Oh, no, next. You know, and you might come back to it later, but it's not going to be the first one you listen to. Whilst if you see one that goes, hello, Alex, check out my song, we're so-and-so, and there's a one MP3 and you go, oh, boom, straight in the ears, like we're in. But rather than that kind of overwhelming me with choice of where I'm going to start and try to make me figure it out, you figure it out and tell me. You know.
We got another one about genre specifics. I suppose it's do you get much Americana on your show? So I suppose that's like roots, American music, gospel, folk, kind of.
Yeah,
rock.
I don't get many submissions for it, but if it's good, it gets on. So send it through. Yeah, it's not a huge genre, I don't think, in terms of new artists in the UK. But there's a lot of it that comes from overseas. Yeah, but for sure, like if it's good, it gets on.
Yeah, no, good answer.
Send one track though.
When I suppose interesting, coming back to your point earlier, and I've had a few artists discuss this with me as well, but when it comes to songwriting, have you got any tips for an artist to get into songwriting for other artists? Are there any ways into labels? Do you know of any ways? I know it's not specifically what you're involved in, but any good advice for aspiring writers that want to write for other artists?
That is a really good question, and I'm afraid I don't think I'm the best person to ask.
Sure.
I know songwriters, but I don't know enough about their journey and how it's all worked out in the mainstream. It's slightly different in the alternative world because it's much more close knit. In the mainstream, though,
maybe on a different level, a lot of it's maybe collaborating with local artists around you and just seeing who you gravitate to. And sometimes you can make a bigger buzz as a bit of a collective. Because as you know, some of these tracks at the end of it sometimes have credits for 10, even 20, even more different people. Yeah. So, maybe just working with different people, see how it works, see different styles. You seem to work out who you don't want to work with and who you do. But yeah,
and also important to remember that songwriting is a very different skill. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if you're a songwriter, that is really different to wanting to be an artist. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do both, but it's about being purposeful. Like when you're writing a song, it's not an expression necessarily of yourself. It's you're writing a song for a reason. You're writing for someone else. Some of the best songwriters in the world, like they just write music because they know how to write a top line. They're not trying to like prove anything or like solve anything like an artist would. They're just trying to write a great song. People like Max Martin, who just write pop bangers all day long. And one of my favorite songwriters of all time is Diane Warren. I mean, Diane Warren, I know most people don't even know who Diane Warren is, but basically name a massive power ballad and bet your bottom dollar Diane Warren wrote it. Like Leanne Rimes' How Do I Live, or like Armageddon, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, by Aerosmith, or whatever it might be. It's just Diane Warren, left, right, and center, just sits down at a piano and smashed out band. Quality. But yeah, I don't know.
For the next talk.
Yeah, but I think that's really good advice from Chris. Is that like, work the scene that you're part of and collaborate with people. Do you ever hear that story about Jason Mraz? So Jason Mraz, he did that song, I Won't Give Up. I won't give up. That tune. Anyway, he was doing open mic nights, and there was a guy, I think it's called Michael Natter, this dude, who was at the end of his career, he'd worked in like agriculture or something, and he was like 60, but he always wanted to like write music, and he used to go to these open mic nights, and he was at an open mic night. He was a songwriter. He always like wrote songs and just always hoped that someone would pick up on one of them. And he met Jason Mraz and said, "Oh, like I'd love to just write some songs for you, just see what you think." And Jason Mraz was like, "All right, cool." And they ended up writing that song together, and it changed his life. This guy just became a multi-million selling like songwriter at 60, just because he got the right opportunity and was in the right place at the right time and had the right attitude.
So yeah, I've had that question. I don't know why. I've had the question asked a few times recently, but is 24 too late to get into the industry or to be an artist? Is there an age limit for artists? I don't know why this keeps coming up. It makes me feel really old at the moment.
It makes me feel really old. I think it depends what you're trying to do. Well, even so, I don't know. I think I understand why that's coming up, because we are in a society now where it feels like everybody in pop is super young, and those kind of more, seasoned pop stars seem to not be there, you know, which is strange. But I don't think there's no age limit on talent and mindset, you know, and it's, look at any industry, people come through later in life all the time, you know, whether they're songwriters like the guy I just talked about, the Martin guy, I'm sure that's his name, or like look at actors. There's some people that don't become. Look at Bryan Cranston. I was thinking about Bryan Cranston the other day. Like, who was Bryan Cranston before Breaking Bad? What was he? Did anyone ever hear of him? And suddenly he's like massive, and he's like, how old's he? He must be like mid-50s. You know, sort of just out of nowhere, bam, he's a superstar. And I just think if you're making like really bubblegummy pop music, it might be a bit weird if you're in your 40s. You know, like they might just feel a bit weird, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And also, do you care? Like if you want to make it, if you want to make music that you love, like if you care and if you're authentic, people will follow.
I think a good example is Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim. He was
right.
You know, fairly old. Well, say old, but you know, early 30s when he broke through. You know, quite some time ago. So, and that touched everyone. You know, across multiple kind of age ranges, I suppose. So yeah, I don't think there's like you said, there's never too late to get into it. It's just when whenever's right time for you, whenever you know yourself and you can kind of push yourself as an artist and you're staying true to what you believe in.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so much truth in that. And a lot of people don't find really what it is they want to put out into the world until they're a little bit older anyway. You know, so yeah, it makes me sad that people feel like they have to ask that question.
I've got a dying question that come in my head, Alex, because we always think the pendulum of music is always changing, but there's been a predominance of a bit of a conglomeration of lots of music like EDM and pop in the charts. Do you think the pendulum's going to hopefully swing back to live music and bands and you know what traditionally would be called real music? Do you think that's going to come back, or do you think it's become a bit more niche and underground now?
It's such a good question, you know that, and we have had a really weird time in the UK for quite some time, you know, like, and people forget because we live here in the UK. People think that this is what music's like everywhere, and of course it isn't at all. You know, culturally, musically, we're so different to other parts of the world. You know, like I often find this when you meet American pop artists, you know, like whether they're rappers or like singers or whatever, they all love rock music, all of them. Like, because in America, rock is so ingrained into the culture. You know, so you can be Lady Gaga, but you can still love AC/DC. You know, or you can be like, I don't know, insert any rapper here and they'll love rock music and metal. You know, they love it. It's just not part of the culture here in the UK, and it's really strange how the alternative scene, rock music, has been kind of like under the radar for such a long time. Because like you say, Chris, usually it goes, you know, you've got the 90s with Britpop and all that, and it turns into something else, and every sort of decade something new and exciting comes along. But rhythmic pop has been the mainstay of the charts here in the UK now for a long time. And I actually don't know if it's going to be soon that, you know, guitar music is dominant again, because I also think it's also kind of like an unusual time anyway, because tribalism is sort of dying off a little bit, which I actually think is really positive. You know, people these days, and just to give you an example, like years and years and years ago at Kerrang, we used to have these sweepers, these little jingles that would go out that were really simple. There'd be a clip of a song and it would say no, and then there'd be a clip of another song and it would say yes. So it'd be like a Justin Bieber song, like baby, baby, and it would go no, it's like sarcastic voice, and then it would be like some metal tune, and it would go yes, Kerrang radio. That was the music positioner. These would go out across the station all the time, and I used to say to the boss at the time, I was like, I don't like those. I don't like them. And they really jarred with me, because I could see what was going on. I could see that that tribalism was starting to die out. And if you're looking on people's like MySpace profiles or whatever it was at the time, people were as excited about pop music as they were about Slipknot, you know, and there was like, so now you see people who talk about being the number one, Slipknot fan and the number one One Directioner. You know, the idea that we still live in a time where you're either all rock or you're all hip hop or you're all dance or you're all drum and bass or whatever it is. Those sort of times are mercifully behind us. So I do think that means that the musical wheel has become a bit, I don't know, maybe it's off its hinge, off its axle a little bit. But I also think it's really, people forget. I have this conversation with people all the time in the commercial world. People forget that rock is absolutely massive in the UK. The second biggest single site festival in the UK after Glastonbury is Download. It's not Reading, it's not Tea in the Park, it's not Isle of Wight Festival, it's Download. That is the second biggest festival in the UK after Glastonbury. 100,000 people go. It's massive. Yeah, no one talks about it. It's mad. It's really weird. But I just think, yeah. I don't know. Has that answered the question at all? Or have I just ranted?
It's just a shame because I see a lot. We see a lot of youngsters in the studio and young adults, and they practice for years and years and years. And that's not to sort of say people don't practice for their songwriting years and years and years. But I would hate to see that that's marginalised out, and it almost feels like it needs that new prodigy of coming in. That almost feels like a little bit. Almost like Bastille when that came in, it was like brilliant bands are coming in again, and it's almost like it doesn't feel like we've had that for 2 or 3 years, where you've got almost like country mixed with EDM and pop, and it's almost like it's almost like Stock Aitken and Waterman in the 80s. It's almost like 20 of the tunes of the chart have all got the same beats and breaks and sort of systems. But yeah, it's interesting. Really do hope that comes back, and it's
I do.
But
it's part of the craft as well, isn't it? You want people that, I don't know, I'm always worried about talking about this because I don't want to ever come across like I'm like bashing pop, but there is no doubt about it. And bear in mind, I do a show on Mellow Magic, timeless, relaxing classic. We're playing stuff like My Baby Just Cares for Me by Nina Simone, or Feeling Good, Michael Bublé's version of it, and then we're playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Eva Cassidy, her version of that, or Fields of Gold by Sting, or Purple Rain by Prince, or Imagine by John Lennon, or whatever it is, like massive, game-changing classics, and you just think, all right, put that next to the new, insert pop artist song here. Is that song can anyone actually tell me that song is gonna have the same impact on society and people are still going to be listening to it in 50 years' time? No. And do you know what? What's really interesting is that the artists that do it stick out like a mile. So look at someone like Adele, like when someone comes along who does write those classics, who does have that craft and does make that kind of real music that isn't just that vapid stuff like that gets churned out. When someone does come along like that, they're absolutely enormous. They like trounce everybody else. One of the biggest superstars in the world. And similar with Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran came out and wrote amazing singer-songwriter songs and just trounced everyone. Wasn't he the biggest? Isn't he the most well-paid songwriter in the world? Just completely just across everybody else. So when people do it, it works. It's just mad that more people don't do it. But I guess it's because it's hard, isn't it? Being Ed Sheeran.
Have we got time for one more, Lewis, do you think? Or
I think, yeah, I'm going to go back to an earlier question. And I know we're speaking a lot about kind of introvert and extrovert and how people can come across. But what if any advice for a particularly shy person who is quite a talented artist? How, is there any, how can they overcome some of these barriers, I suppose, to be interesting in interviews and kind of, be personable when they meet people out and about?
It's a really, really good question, and it's really, really hard to answer that. I think that everybody's weakness can be a virtue if you turn it and find a way to use it. People don't believe it, but when I was a kid, I was desperately shy. Like I just couldn't talk to anybody. I was just so shy. Not with my friends, like and my family, but out in person. Like, I'd have my hair in my face. I couldn't talk to people. Couldn't talk to girls. Like Jesus. Just awful. And I just, the changing thing for me, which sounds mad, but I started working at TGI Fridays, and I was just like used to clean tables and stuff. And because of TGI Fridays is a really vibrant atmosphere, you couldn't be shy. You couldn't do it. Like everyone was so up and buoyant all the time. It was weirder to be shy than it was to be up. Do you know what I mean? So I was fortunate that I found myself in an environment where I was just surrounded by people who were like lifting me up, basically, which is working as one of the best things that ever happened to me. I look on life. It seems mad saying now. I mean, it also made me really to eat loads more. But yeah, so so I think having a group or people that believe in you and are going to lift you up, I think is really important. But also, there's ways of making it a virtue. Like if you are really shy, like figure out why really shy and what it is about your shyness as part of your personality that people will find interesting. Because I bet they will. You know, as long as you're purposeful about things, people find something interesting in that. I don't know. It's a really difficult one though. I mean, there's also other things to think about, like being practical, like going to a life coach or like seeing a therapist or whatever it is, and trying to figure out why it is that you find yourself entombed in a shell like that. And there's loads of different reasons that will be really personal to every different person. But what I do know is that sort of stuff massively helps, and just finding someone to talk to who shares that, you know, that mindset, I think would be helpful.
That leads us really well to a couple of weeks' time, actually, because we've got a class with Cece Sammy. I think you've met her from the competitions as well.
Yeah,
she's a huge performance coach as well as being a singing coach, and maybe the guys that have come along tonight could come along in a couple of weeks and put that question to her and her expertise on that. But brilliantly, thank you, Alex. I mean, I think it's one of the first masterclasses we've done. We've only just had one person just drop off then, even though we've gone well over. And just big round of applause to you, Alex. Brilliant.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
On point. I'm sure we could talk all day as we do when we get in the competitions. You know, if anyone wants to reach out to you, is that okay if we sort of pass your details on? Is that going to be?
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I know what Lewis does as well as I know people have asked about EPK and things like that. We'll forward some links on that so you guys we can get more information on that, more information on how to approach radio stations with some links. But it's been a brilliant evening. Really enjoyed it. Been very fruitful. We hope to catch everyone in a couple of weeks. And again, if you don't know about Mass Records, we'll send you a link on that as well. And get signed up for next year, because I know it's a fairly limited process. And any questions, address them to Lewis and myself. And brilliant. Fantastic evening, everyone. Take care, yeah? See you later.
Right. Thanks so much, guys.
Cheers, Alex. Good night.
Bye.